Hey, what's going on, AmCon? If you're listening to me now, you're probably listening to me on a podcast, or you're listening to this on the premier side of American Contingency.locals.com. Today, I have a special guest named Siobhan, which is Irish, by the way, who has a story that I want you guys to tune into because it is a more prevalent story that more people are tuned into to get a perspective on life and the way that we think. People think that we're a subculture, and maybe we are, but I think we're just moderately somewhere in the middle of all this craziness. And Siobhan, who is a farm girl who grew up in the country, who has a journey and a story, you're going to relate to her. And I think it's important that we tell it, and I think it's important that we have the conversation. And I'm super excited to have Siobhan on the podcast. So thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you, Mike.
You like that intro?
Yeah, I loved it.
Oh, I like
it was perfect.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Let's just end it right there. So one of the reasons that I'm drawn to you is you're a very country. Even using the word simple is offensive, I think. But I feel like you're a salt of the earth person. And
Thank you.
You're like a human being in their most natural state. And then you tack on society and social media and all these things, and you become something else. But you have a story that's super impactful for American Contingency because it's happening a lot and making people realize, hey, we just want to be who we are instead of being whatever this is.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about it, and I think it's a super interesting story. And I guess the start point for us is just telling us who you are. So why don't you frame where you're from, kind of your upbringing, and then we'll navigate it from there.
Well, thanks, Mike. So my name is Siobhan Danger Darwish, and I am from the hills of Northern California. I am a second-generation cannabis farmer, and so I guess that's where a lot of my simplicity, I agree, simplicity comes from. My parents were back to the landers. They left Southern California in the 70s, went up into the Humboldt Hills, like many people did during that time when, cannabis was kind of exploding, essentially, getting more and more popular. And so I kind of by default was handed the torch. I do have siblings, but I really was the one to pick up my father's legacy. And so I spent a lot of time, being in the black market. It's so weird to even admit to that now today that I can say that.
You're allowed to now.
You're allowed to now. But yeah, we lived off the land, and it was really, back in the 80s, early 90s, even into the 2000s a bit, was a very cottage industry. And so we were very self-sufficient. We were preppers. We, depended on our community and ourselves to grow. And that happened. And so I was handed my father's land in 2010, and I farmed on that land as a communal effort. That was a lot of the land in Northern California was communal effort. When my father passed away, he passed away with a bit of debt. And so I was literally forced into the position of growing and contributing to that communal system, because gangsters were the other owners of that particular land, and I had no choice. And so I was thrust into this, though I loved it, and I'm very honored to have had the experience. But so farming outside for a good 15 years on that particular property, and then on 2015. The federal government came and did the largest raid that Humboldt County, Trinity County, and Mendocino County, which is referred to as the Emerald Triangle, was raided. And they did not arrest anyone except for they took a lot of land and they kind of scattered everybody. And so, coinciding, we were watching and getting raided, and then coinciding with the legalization of cannabis. It had just happened in Colorado, and so
What year was that?
2015.
Oh, wow, so
in
the same
Colorado.
time.
Oh, coinciding, yeah. And so that was just me getting rolled was a huge catalyst for me being like, I don't want to be in the black market anymore. I want to support people being able to access this herb. And the only way that I saw doing that was to go forth with legalization. And so my husband and I in June 2016, received the first cannabis cultivation permit in the state of California. And Humboldt County was the first county to go legal. And so, from living this life, being raised to not tell anyone what my dad did, was a huge weight on my shoulders. And I finally stepped out into the light and was like, here we are, we're legal, like, let's do it. This is so amazing. And before I knew it, it was a landslide of media attention. And National Geographic was the first magazine I'd ever been in, So it was really amazing. And so for the last 4 years, I have been producing and creating cannabis cultivation educational videos, because through my experiences in the legal realm, I realized that eventually small farmers were going to be wiped out. And, I was witnessing this with my community. My community was very drastically being put out of business by the rules and regulations are absurd in the state of California. And I understand producing, clean cannabis. I support that 110%. When you research who I am and you look it up, you'll see that I've done speeches on organic farming and sustainable craft farming and such. But the regulations to small business in the state of California are disturbing, and they were putting people out of business left and right. And with the small farmers going out of business, I, started to gain, through creating these how-to videos, I started to gain attention. And so I started using my platform to speak about how these farmers were being put out of business. And it's really because of California's regulations. And realizing that with the small farmer going away, craft cannabis was also fading. And so I started speaking out on how to grow your own, realizing that the only way that we were going to keep the herb, the plant, in the hands of the people was to educate them how to grow their own, which was really dear to my heart, because it really went back to, where I was raised in homesteading, and grow your own and be self-sufficient and make your own medicine.
Yeah.
Do it yourself.
Were you pioneering this space at this point? Because I feel like that because of the legalization of marijuana, it became more of an open thing, like a YouTube thing. And then I don't think I've heard of many people doing that until I came across your channel and I saw that. I think that's super interesting. Were you one of the first?
Yes, thank you. Yes, my social media platform, I guess you could call it, is called Grow Sisters. And what it is my sister and I, because we were the first, we just got out there and started doing videos and educating on it, and became very popular because we were girls in our garden, and we were educating on the plant and how to grow, versus the very much so dominated cannabis scene in the past, which was just women smoking in their bathing suits out of bongs.
Yeah, a couple of high times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when women started showing up and, doing it themselves and promoting other women in the space, and in, I guess 2017, 18, there was a very large feminist movement going on as well, coinciding. And so, we just kind of fell right into that, and I became very fortunate just by position in time that I was able to speak out on this matter, and yeah, our popularity bloomed through that. And yeah, it was an interesting thing to go from, the shadows and never talking about it to suddenly being on a stage and explaining, how women can make it in the industry.
That has got to be crazy. Yeah. It's just so people know, like when I started, in life, I was not a supporter of marijuana whatsoever. I remember even arguing in college, in a small stint of college before I went back on active duty, that there were a whole bunch of issues with it, right? Mm-hmm. And that includes the abuse of it and all these things. Until I realized in my own treatment of post-traumatic stress that the alternatives were synthetic chemicals that were blended together in various forms that were a multitude of different medications that I was prescribed by the VA that screwed up my system. Trazodone, on top of Ambien, all these things to help me sleep. And somebody, I can't remember who, it might have been a buddy of mine. There's a couple things that happened, but a buddy of mine said, hey, there's this, I don't like smoking anything. I'm not a smoker. So they were like, hey, you could vape this thing, this CBD cartridge, and it will help you sleep. And I said, well, I could use help sleeping because Ambien at this point had ruined my life. My life was upside down because I was taking Ambien and then magically going into drinking because that was what I combined with it, and waking up naked in just weird circumstances. Just jacked my life up. Like, lost a couple girlfriends over it. But I realized I needed something, and I did this, and I remember waking up with a clear head and not the fog that I typically had in my head, and then thinking to myself, man, I feel really good. Like, I don't feel hungover. I feel like I could actually live a normal life. Mm-hmm. And it changed my life. In many ways, there's two things that I could point to that don't have to do anything with psychologists, which I never saw, was Pearl, my service dog that was trained by Labs for Liberty. Big shout out to them, because I had companionship, and I had something in someone that was there for me. And then I had marijuana. I was able to sleep. I've never had anxiety issues, and they started developing. And I don't like taking it during the day, but at night, when everything's quiet, when my head starts to stir, which most often people with PTSD, in my case at least, things start to arise. Yeah. It would quieten in that, and then I would be able to just relax and rest. And it's an amazing experience. And I still am not only a believer in it, but an advocate for it now, because nobody in my position, at least I'm assuming with my conservative background, is willing to admit they like it, or they use it, or it's beneficial, and it's all of those things. Yeah. So I'm super interested in the take on it, because from a farmer's perspective, it's not just about the end user result, which people think often it's just about getting high, but there's so much more to that. You face something with the popularity in this changing culture, something that impacted your life in not only positive ways, but also negative ways. First, let's talk about the positive, because you're an advocate for education in so many ways, and a role model where you're doing these speaking engagements. You're on the cover of all these magazines, and that's super interesting. How was that experience for you?
Oh, scary. Yeah. Scary, but, flattering. And ultimately for me, my passion was in encouraging and educating people on growing their own. And cannabis, it's funny because I joke, cannabis being the gateway drug, but cannabis was really the gateway herb to me getting people interested in soil science. And that's where I was passionate about. That's what I was excited about. I was excited about, okay, so you can buy this eighth and it's going to cost you $65, or you can grow this pound and it's going to cost you $13. And wow. So, yeah,
I like that math.
I love that math. And so and you can share that with your neighbors legally, and you can grow it legally in most states. Just check your state's rules and regulations. With that being said, I loved it. I loved getting to go and, speak to the public. And I was in a really unique spot too, because I couldn't be bought. My social media became very large, and I had a lot of companies come at me and try to, get me to promote their stuff. And I didn't need to do that financially because I am a farmer. And, so I was kind of in this position where it was like they loved me, but they also kind of like despised me a little bit because I was that wild card. You never knew when I was going to get on stage and say something that was not unscripted or something. And, so I had a lot of fun in that industry. I am still in the cannabis industry. I still own my farm. We have leased it and I have moved. And the two major factors for that was, one was that I wanted to speak out against California's rules and regulations being so tight on the small farmer. And so with that being said, I also filmed a documentary that was awarded in multiple film festivals, and I received more coverage than I should have for, filming it on a GoPro. Nice. But just make it, just do it. Just get out there and do it, because you'll find great results. But
what was the name of the
Know Your Farmer.
Know Your Farmer. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So you can find Know Your Farmer on my YouTube channel, the Grow Sisters YouTube channel. You can find the Know Your Farmer video, and it's really a special video because I am so connected in Humboldt County that I was able to speak to third generation cannabis farmers. I was able to speak to a black market farmer and really get their perspective on legalization and how the government was, binding these farmers to a certain type of growing and to a certain type of production and how much money they were asking of them. So it's a really interesting documentary. But so on back to my initial the decision for me to move forward with pursuing my passion is that I completed my dad's legacy. I did. I got a farm. It's running. I produce the high quality craft cannabis. We still grow into the native soil. We're still full sun, which is very rare for a lot of cannabis production.
Is that why Humboldt? I lived in Northern California in Jackson and Ione, and I've always heard Humboldt County. It was like the best. What makes it the best?
It's the
soil,
climate.
The climate.
Yep, the climate and the soil, and really ultimately, we have this term. It's called the redwood curtain, and the redwood curtain is a physical major forest that kind of shuts off the 101, and we have been able to use that as protection from the outside world, essentially.
All redwoods.
It's all huge. The oldest redwoods in the United States.
I love it there.
Incredible.
So beautiful.
It's so beautiful. But so with sitting in that kind of that pocket, the moisture comes in from the ocean and it creates this moisture at night, and then it goes out and the sun's really hot during the day. And so you get kind of this terroir, which is unlike anywhere else. And
it's like an aerial mist. Every single day you get this little spray.
Yeah, and the plants
really cool.
just love it, and really the culture too is very accepting of that particular lifestyle. And so, with that combined with incredible soil and being in close relation to San Francisco and LA, Humboldt just really thrived. Not to mention that there's a learning curve to everything. And so if you get into something and you're like, I'm going to be the best gun builder, there's a curve to that, as being a professional. And so with what you see with Humboldt County is it's these grandfathers that taught these fathers that these fathers are now teaching their kids. And so you get that knowledge that breaks down into the world's best cannabis. Oh, and they're very stingy with their genetics. So
yeah, because the strains and the genetics stay in the same soil, in the same plants, and are just evolved and stay in the same area, right?
Yeah. So Humboldt is kind of, particular in what they grow and who they're sharing it with and stuff like that. And so, truly, Humboldt is the United States' mecca of cannabis, and it has been for quite some time. And, I don't see anything changing with that, because they're always going to have the best climate, So, yeah. So in my adventure of fulfilling my dad's legacy and getting to, plug in sustainability and hopefully preparedness and growing your own, I was really grateful for everything that Grow Sisters did. But what really was a major catalyst for me to change my life and drastically leave my farm and pursue other things with all of this incredible knowledge and ability that I gained to communicate to the public and to share my story, but not only share my story, but share other stories in a clear and comprehensible way. I celebrate the fact that what happened to me with Grow Sisters was negative, like you had said, but at the same time, out of all of this stuff that pursued was amazing. And so the negative thing that I think brought us together, I contacted you and I was like, my God, what do I do? Like, how do I deal with this? I didn't even know this was a thing. So the beginning of 2020, I posted a photo of a white person with dreadlocks. If you look on my Instagram, if you look on the Grow Sisters Instagram, we had been posting people, all sorts of people. It had never been an issue, never, not once. And I was contacted by a person out of Portland, and they, really ripped into me about it. And they suggested that I, because it was culturally inappropriate. And this was, parallel happening with the unfortunate situation for George Floyd. And the person claimed that I was being insensitive and, that I needed to reevaluate my posting of people with dreadlocks. And I came back at her with, this is not a political platform. This is a platform that I am educating people on how to become self-sufficient in growing their own. We're not politically based. I don't really, and just kind of left it at that. This person, returned with a mob. And very quickly, this incredibly wholesome, very loving thing that my sister and I had created was suddenly under an incredible attack. And it spiraled. It spiraled out of control. And I know that a lot of people are sitting in their homes and they're listening to this, or wherever you are currently, you're listening to this. I know you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is very, very familiar. We've heard this types of stuff happening all over. Well, yeah, and it spiraled. Suddenly I was getting letters at my house. People who I had worked with in the past were getting letters telling them that, and it was all the same letter, and basically it was, Siobhan Danger Darwish, curator of the Grow Sisters, is an alt-right conspiracy theorist person who claims to be, this woke, which I had to go look up all these words. I know that sounds terrible, but I didn't even know what woke exactly was. And so here I am educating myself on, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to read White Fragility because they're yelling at me to read it. And so I'm reading it. And then I'm like trying to really understand how appropriating someone's culture is a bad thing, because I kind of am under, like, it reads appreciating the culture, and so I'm going through all of this crazy stuff in my head. And then I started getting the death threats. And ultimately, it was fine until they started threatening my little sister. And that was a problem. And so we moved her because the death threats included each of our addresses. At the time, we were not living together. And so we moved her, got her protected, and then I was receiving really disgusting threats in my mailbox. I was shipped disgusting things, unspeakable things, and so it started to become very concerning. And there was nothing I could do to protect myself. because being a license holder, a cannabis permitted farm, I couldn't have a firearm at my home. My farm was at my home.
So that's part of the rules and regulations for California
Yes.
is if you own a cannabis farm in California, no matter what the firearm is, like you can't even have a shotgun.
Well, I believe that has changed a bit in the sense that you can hire a security guard and they can go through the process and then you would pay for them. But my farm was my home.
Because some places are the dispensary.
Yes.
And they're classifying you under the same regulation.
Yeah.
Which is essentially your working marijuana domicile, and you can't have a firearm even if it's at your own home.
Right.
Wow.
And it's kind of uncommon. What happened, in the early 90s up until the until kind of now, we saw a lot of, it was cottage market. It was mom and pops. We lived on our farms. That's just how it was. Yeah. And, we now with the larger corporations moving in, they don't live on their farm. It's just a spot, and so.
Again, mom and pop versus big corporations coming in. I mean, my mom's beauty salon was in our garage, one chair concreted garage for
how sweet
10, 15 years before which is weird that my house was a salon as a kid, as a boy. So a Caucasian girl with dreadlocks became a point of contention for canceling, and I'm assuming deliberately attacking you guys to try to cancel you or try to get you to shut down everything.
Yeah. It was really interesting because anything that I would come back with, I was like, okay, well, if you cancel this Grow Sisters media platform, okay, that's fine. I don't make money off of this.
Were they attacking the media platforms as well, like comments?
It went from the dreadlocks being an issue to me using the word sisters in my name. Yeah.
Wow.
Grow Sisters. And, this all started, my belief is, we don't know, because every time that my attorney and I would try to chase them down or locate them, it was ghost accounts. They were really strategic. It was impressive how far they went to destroy a business it wasn't even a business. I was just creating content for free to educate people. But they attacked, my farm. They attacked the sales of my cannabis. And, anyone that I worked with, I had collaborations with people that they emailed the people. I was a board member of certification. It's hard. I don't want to out anyone, but I sat as a board member for an organic standard board organization for a very long time. I mean, I was very instrumental in their work, and I got a phone call and they said, hey, we found out that you're a racist and we're going to remove you from the board because these people who also think you're racist won't be, contributing. And I'm like, I'm sitting there and I'm really asking myself, because no one wants to be called a racist. My heart is just like hurting because I'm sitting there going, how am I a racist? And of course you question that. And so the good things that came out of it was I did the education and I realized that I am not racist to that definition that we find in the dictionary before it was, manipulated to mean something else. Anyway, and so it was a scary attack on something that really did not need to be attacked. My belief, to go back to that really quickly, was my attorney and I, we searched for these people. We tried to go back and find who it was and was doing that, and we couldn't. The initial woman who first attacked me and then went and got her, did the rally cry for other people to come, which initially caused it to snowball into being that. She had contacted me probably about 6 months previous to this, and she said, "Hey, can you support a LGBTQ whatever person and post this? That's what I am, and can you post this post for me?" Sure, no problem. Posted her post. I was like, "Hey, everybody, go check out this person. She's doing this really awesome stuff. Go check her out." I gave her a post. No big deal. she hit me back up and she was like, hey, can you do that again? I didn't really get like that good of a result. And I was like, oh yeah, sure. I didn't. And it's not that I didn't because I didn't want to. It's that I didn't because I have 100,000 people following me, which this is not my job. I'm not making money on this. I am replying to 400 comments, and not to mention the 600 emails that are coming in, and so I didn't post her the second time, and I kick myself. I should have, but I just...
You shouldn't have.
Well, I mean,
I think in hindsight, if you wanted to save yourself the woes, eventually the bottom line is this would have already happened, because I think the thing is that this is a deliberate tactic. I mean, this isn't just made in fits of passion because they didn't get a post. There's a tactic to this, which is, if I'm going to use your platform to propel my own platform and my own ideology, which ultimately it is, and you don't support that, the more I could cancel, which for them might even be an automated process where they implement it into a farm, a network of cancel culturists, which might even be machine learned, that just sends out the blast, right? Yeah. I just talked to Evan Hafer in detail about this, where his company, Black Rifle Coffee Company, was attacked, and it had the 3 to 5 same blurbs of information and comments, and they were all fake accounts. They tracked them back.
Repeating it and
repeating
it
it
and
again
repeating
and
it. Yeah, and I noticed that as well. And then the one account that would talk to another account, talk to another account, talk to another account, and they were like rallying my followers in a really, I mean, it was so strategic that I was almost impressed. But it was so strategic and so just out of the blue. And again, I mean, I had a lot that I wanted to, I'm grateful that I have educated myself on through this, because now I realize who I am and where I stand, and I feel secure in that. But at the same time, I thank you for letting me share my story, because, this caused me to leave my farm. This is my first year. This will be my first spring in 26 years that I'm not farming for myself, and so I'm happy with the move. I'm embracing the change. I love it. I'm very happy. But at the very same time, it's hard. It's sad. Like, I didn't feel safe in my own home because I didn't. Okay, so let me continue on the story. Just my breaking point. So my breaking point was when I got a DM that said, if you pay $20K to the BLM movement, we will stop pursuing you. And then they put someone's Venmo at the bottom. Not, here's the website, donate to these people. It was someone's Venmo. And I was just like, this is it. I'm not safe here. I continued to get these messages that are including my home's address. I'm out. And so we're fortunate. We leased the farm. But at the very same time, I thank you for letting me on to share this, because I know that a lot of other people are going through this, and it's not just white people, it's not black people, it's not Asian people, it's everyone. Everyone is at some sort of risk of being attacked on a level that I personally think it was maleficent to someone who knew me personally. And she knew that if she hit that timing just right, rallied the correct people to incite this, that it was just going to snowball. Fortunately, I still have, a ton of followership on Instagram. I'm still doing my videos. You can find Grow Sisters on YouTube. You can find us on Instagram. And please, feedback after you're watching this, please tell me if you see anything that I am producing that is in any way, offensive, because I don't want to be offensive. My whole goal in this position that I was thrust into, was to educate people how to be self-sufficient. That's it.
See, I don't think, one, you're a very graceful and kind person. Thanks. But you don't have to be, because when you're doing the right thing, there's no reason to apologize. And I think that one of the problems that I've even illustrated it as early as a couple hours ago, is that in social media, which is consuming people's lives, right?
Yeah.
There's no doubt it is. I love social media for the communication and networking, which is how we initially met, as well as the ability to grow an idea into a business. And one of the major issues I'm realizing is not only is it influencing markets, but it's influencing behavior. So you have malice intended people that find the best tactic, which is in order to destroy what you've worked hard for by depending on an infrastructure, which in this case is social media, they could find ways or means to destroy what you've worked so hard for in business. It's almost it's the construct in business, and they found the destruction of tearing everything you've worked your entire life for. So I think one of the issues is we're tying in culture here and even guilt, maybe in this case, white guilt for something that you're not responsible for. And so they're saying to you, you are culturally appropriating because that's not inclusive to the white race. That's a black thing, or whatever the race is. I mean, if I had the hair, I would grow dreadlocks out of spite for this circumstance. Because the problem I have is the freedoms that we live in this country and the benefit that we live in is based on the sacrifice of people who have fought and defended this country.
Amen.
Of all color spectrums, including tens of thousands of African Americans who fought during the Civil War and hundreds of thousands of white people who have died on behalf of fighting for those same freedoms for black people. Now, culturally, there's obviously issues that we've been through, but that's people. That's called history. Yeah. That's why it's history, and we could only move forward from here. And you're absolutely right that, I mean, your story, which is impactful to me because it's so real and present, is a lot of people's story in this life. Even mine recently, where they wanted to cancel me. I mean, I think the only way that it's kind of funny, but I think it's actually true, that I've navigated this is because I'm Asian. Because I'm Asian, I've been able to hey, my cousins are black. They're black and Korean. I have Puerto Rican and Korean family members. I have white and Korean. So you can't call me racist because there's nothing in my history, and everything in my history tells you that I'm not. So they haven't been able to cancel me, even when they tried.
Yeah, debunks their scenario.
It does. Mm-hmm. And what breaks my heart for circumstances like yours is these empty but definitely scary threats of not only attacking your business and your personal life, but threatening your sister. Now some of the conversations we had is this really woke movement, which I think is the truly woke movement, of the realization that you need to protect yourself and be prepared to protect yourself, which I know is a staple of your life, but coming into even moving and then being independent and then affiliating with kind of what we're doing, that's bold from somebody who has your background in a more liberal ideology and culture. But even on the topic of weed, that's not a conservative ideology or idea. Right. Most conservatives would tell you that's bad, stay away. Sure. So you went in the opposite direction, where you basically said, I'm living this life, and you're not necessarily I don't think you're becoming conservative, because I think you have a baseline of conservatism, but you're coming to the realization that this is a problem. I need to get away from this problem. How do you move forward from this position in your life? And what are the things that you do that you didn't do because of the circumstance that you just went through?
Oh, I love that you bring this up. And I'll circle back around because I want to answer that. But earlier, you just in this moment, you mentioned, yes, I am. Cannabis is certainly more liberal and, has all these things. I think that one of the reasons why I want to step out and talk about what happened to me is because it's all been authentic thus far. If I continue on this authentic path in explaining what happened to myself, my hope is that others will be like, okay, I feel that way too, and follow and feel comfortable in this very awkward situation that we're all experiencing. But there's no, just because you voted for Trump does not make you racist. Just because you voted for Biden does not make you liberal. Just because there's no lines here. Everyone wants to draw these lines and divide us. And I just want to go back to, really underlining that as much as I possibly can. There is no divide here. People have all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of beliefs, all sorts of movement that, new beliefs that they're moving into and new understandings and things like that. And so I think that where you were asking where I would like to move forward with this is I want to encourage people to really understand what they're being fed, especially from the media. And in my example of what, this one person was able to take this scenario and cause this effect and really get people to, rally against this particular situation in, for example, the dreadlock situation. When you read a comment that says this person is racist, please do some research on that. When you read a headline that says so-and-so says this, please do some research on that. And, I'll give American Contingency a huge shout out because I was feeling crazy. I was like, what is going on with me? Here I am. I'm researching all these stories and none of them make sense. I'm sure a lot of people are relating to that at this moment. But I think it was Dustin that gave a podcast or was speaking the other day, and it was Scam, SCAME, and it's the anagram to, you guys will have to add that now because of course I'm not remembering, but it just laid out where is the information coming from, who is saying it. Really do your research because there is such a mass amount of false propaganda that is being pushed on us to divide us. And unfortunately, these social justice warriors, they call themselves social justice warriors, but if you are sitting behind your screen and you are about to make a nasty comment of somebody, you are a social justice troll. You are not a warrior. A warrior is someone who goes out and is actually applying that on a real basis, not sitting behind a screen. And so for me moving forward, it's always worked for me to be authentic, to be my goofy self, to tell my story. And this is how my story evolves. I am still going to be creating content around sustainability. Let's make our own soap. Let's grow our own garden. How do we build our soil? And so all of these different challenges that we're facing right now as a society we really need to just stop and research where that information is coming from, because I'm not saying I'm innocent. Maybe the dreadlock thing is a big issue, and I'm sorry for that. It wasn't my hair. It wasn't me that did it. It was, if you're gonna have a problem with Grow Sisters having white people with dreadlocks, go look at High Times. Go look at Dope Magazine. Go look at Skunk Magazine. All of those magazines also include people with dreadlocks. So, yeah, not to mention that dreadlocks are of multi-generational Irish people and,
tons of cultures.
The Asians, the tons of cultures embraced and had dreadlocks. So come on now, but so I guess where I would like to go with it is in the direction of helping people understand, break down honest news, because that was false news. She took a stab at myself because I wasn't aware that it was going to be something that was going to cause such an issue. And because of that, because I don't personally care how people decide to wear their hair, and I think that's an okay statement at this point, and just kind of—
You're so kind.
Gosh,
See? Just say it and mean it.
Well, I mean, I do mean it. I do mean it. No one ever should have their life threatened. No one should ever be blackmailed because they posted something that they believe about. This whole thing, of course, like the good that you asked about the good things that come out of this. The good things that came out of this for me I always believed in the Constitution. I always was so appreciative of the people that went and served for our country to defend our Constitution, to defend America as the greatest country on earth, as it is, as it still currently, as we sit, beginning of July or January, we'll see, still the greatest country on earth, And so my hope is that we all look back to our freedom of speech, of our freedom of being, of our freedom of who we are, and respect that and think about that and reflect on the fact that if on my account, I want to put a photo of a person with dreadlocks, maybe it doesn't need to be attacked. Maybe it doesn't need to be corrected. Maybe it doesn't need to be, you don't like it, stop following.
Yeah.
And
Maybe
that's
you didn't
okay.
have an agenda.
No, I had no, God. I mean, my agenda was, hey, look at these cute girls in the garden. So, yeah.
I wonder, what are your thoughts on the reasons why people or these ideologies do what they do? I mean, there's obviously a minimizing. There's also it's maybe competitiveness. They just want to get rid of the competition, right? Do you really think culturally that they care, or is it just a tactic that has to do with money, power, resources? It seems very desperate to me. But whenever you do something very deliberate and calculated like that, there's always a more deeply rooted thing. Do you have any idea when you see these people do what they do, why they do it?
Well, I think for social media specifically, it's virtue signaling, right? It's, I'm the better person because I'm doing this for this group, or no, I'm the better person because I'm doing this for this. And it's very competitive on social media, which, okay.
Haters are going to hate.
Haters are going to hate. But also, unfortunately, there has been, and we know this now, there's been a mass amount of people who have been brainwashed in inciting from whether it be from our political stances or, just all of it. There's a higher entity, I believe, that is creating a divide. And, our institutions have been totally taken over by social justice people who want to create that divide. And I can't answer why. I think it's terribly sad. But in the scheme of things, where there still is slavery on this earth, still to this day, there's still, trafficking of humans. There's terrible, terrible, terrible things happening. I just want to convey to my peers and to people listening to this that attacking someone for these little things are maybe not where your best efforts can go. And granted, we've all been sitting in the house. We're all very stressed out. This virus is freaking everybody out. We've got tons of really stressful political stuff. Isn't it time for us to kind of look around at one another as other Americans versus who is promoting a person with dreadlocks versus promoting another person who supposedly owns the right to have those dreadlocks or whatever that be? I think that just in all of the efforts that you take, especially on social media, but in your life, just to ask yourself, is this continuing to contribute to the divide?
Are we dividing people or are we uniting people? Right. I honestly have a theory that I just came up with, literally while you're speaking. I think if a social media platform like Instagram has which they do, has an algorithm that generates more attention, which is calculated in the application being opened in a section, and we're trying to hold that attention, and it's feeding the same instances of emotional, provocative material. Mm-hmm. I don't even think that element is deliberate, because what happens is when people are looking for the same stuff, and let's just say in this case it's political, and it happens to be something divisive, which generates most emotion, then we're just pulling the like items. We're grouping the things that people just tend or have a tendency to be drawn to.
Right.
I happen to watch 4x4 fails on YouTube because I love watching people who think they know what the hell they're doing with off-road vehicles rip axles off their truck.
Send
it's
it.
fun. Send it. Send it. Hold my beer, watch this. I like those videos. So what I believe is happening in that machined tool that's obviously optimized and improved based off of learning behavior is that people, which are the product, are getting lumped into this, and they become more and more likely to overreact in bad behavior because of what they're drawn to. So now if you take all the things that people are drawn to, political, divisive, whatever happens to be that thing, right? So then now we have this whole section. And in different parts of the world and even different parts of the country, that happens to be something else. Girls in yoga pants, dudes with their shirts, whatever that is, there's a vice. But it happens to be more popular to be in the vice of divisiveness that is the political climate because we're in it right now. Yeah. Well, an election cycle, these tallies of votes, the controversy. And I think the overall arching problem is, again, this dependency on feeling like I'm living a life virtually through my phone. Like if the world's, which I'm going to tweet right after this, the same thing. If the world's problems go away for you when you put your phone down, then there's your answer, right? And what I love about you is this idea of getting back to the most primitive, instinctual, and natural state of who we are. I want that.
Yeah.
I want that in my life. It makes me more reliant on no one but me. It makes me appreciate the nature of things. It makes me more closely connected with all the things I love versus all the things that just kill my time.
Yeah.
And so when talking with you, we had lined out some things that I'm interested in doing in the future with you for sure. Lastly, I want to talk about the objective media thing. You have this apparatus that is social media that is now becoming the information tool for us to understand the world around us, which is obviously biased, which is obviously laced with issues. When we look at moving forward with American Contingency, the application and many of the things that we're doing, like we had a team. What's the name of the team, Dustin?
Raven.
What is it?
Raven.
The Raven team, which is an American Contingency team in Washington, D.C., did this. I had DMs last night where people were like, you got what you wanted because your American Contingency guys are burning the Capitol down. And I said, well, that's not what I wanted ever in the history of my life. But what we are actually doing is providing real-time, objective information that can be leveraged to allow you to make better decisions in your life. And that's objective, and typically objective means boring. And so it's not provocative, right? It's not sexy. Right. But there's a way to deliver that information or disseminate that information the right way. When you look at news and the information that people receive, let's frame it a little bit. Like, is that a problem? Do you think it's a problem? I mean, it's obviously a problem. But how do you fix a problem that's just grossly consuming everything we do? How do you tell people about objective realities and keep them tuned in like you do emotion?
Well, you nailed it earlier with simple. Go back to authentic. Go back to honest. Provide people with what is happening, and that's what I love about American Contingency. Right? Is you're even with the boys on foot, the Raven team.
Yeah, the Raven team. Yeah,
they're on ground and they're not. Here's what's happening. This is what's happening. This isn't a biased peaceful protest, mostly peaceful protesting. You guys, there's buildings burning in the background. Like if you don't, when CNN says something like, oh, they're mostly peaceful protesting and the building is burning in the background, we obviously should maybe have a little conversation with ourselves to be like, okay, well, that wasn't authentic, And so I really appreciate that American Contingency is providing people with information that is just honest and can be taken as they want, right? And so you're and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're providing this information for people to not, rally them on any political bias other than no political bias, more protection of self.
Yes.
And providing them with the tools. And so it's like beautiful, right? Because here's this non-biased information that you're providing. This is what's happening. And then you're also with Fieldcraft Survival, you're actually implementing physically the survival tactics. And so I think that, we are really about to, I guess yesterday and the day before, last week, I was saying, oh, I can't wait. Like big media is going to, crumble and we're going to really start to finally get some honest stuff coming through and all Americans are going to see, Antifa and BLM and, the Proud Boys. We're all going to come together and realize that they've been pitting us against one another. And I say they because that's a loose term, right? Have been pitting us against one another. But ultimately, I'm not sure that large media companies are really going to pay for the propaganda that they have spit out, and like, it's an honor to be sitting here with you because I know what you have done and how much you have put towards helping the American people. And that's the biggest thing right now is there is a major, major gap, void, hole in honest news. And, it's really interesting because people don't, if you tune into, these conservative news outlets, they're being censored. They're being, throttled. And like you were saying earlier, something about, people read it and it just goes in circles. Well, that's that echo chamber. Instagram is an echo chamber of what Instagram wants you to hear. Mm-hmm. Facebook is terrible. Get rid of your Facebook. Horrible. Get out. Next. But I am on Instagram and I do love following it. And I find it really interesting because a lot of my followers through Grow Sisters, they are very liberal and I love them for that. And my heart is in that. I'm with them on that. However, I also do have these other, I'm functioning on a level where I can stand back and be like, okay, maybe we need to research that a little bit more, and my hope is that my followership in that realm will, if they have these thoughts like, oh, that's not really like, oh, that's kind of weird, that it will inspire them to research other things and not just those followers, but everyone and really question where they're getting their news, what they're hearing, and how they're preparing themselves for the news that they're hearing, and we can't prepare ourselves correctly if we're never getting any of the information. Mm-hmm. It's so aggravating to me, and I could go on. Please stop me if I'm going down a hole, but people are not eating. There's bread lines in the Midwest right now. And why are we not talking about that? Why is the media not, we're so involved in all of this political stuff and good, granted, but at the very same time, like the people are suffering and we're not talking about that. We're not talking about these small businesses that are just being totally smashed. And that goes back, and I know I'm getting passionate.
I love it.
That goes back to what I was seeing in the very beginning of 2016 when I became the first legal farm and I watched all of these small farmers around me not be able to afford to go legal. And I mean, I don't even know. My husband and I made it by shoestrings and duct tape. I mean, I'm shocked that we still, somehow financially made it because it was by the grit of the bloody knuckles of me farming the 10,000 square foot garden every single year. So now, fortunately, that I am able to move into something else, I'm so grateful. And there's so much passion. And it's not just about, this political stuff. It's about the small businesses that are being completely taxed out or shut down because of the disease that we're inflicted with. It's all of these things that are connecting to, like, really ultimately, when you step back and you look at all of it, big media is to blame. Their propaganda that they pushed simply due to the election, to take this election, they are absolutely at fault. And that's sad.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think everybody has been duped, and it's been happening since the origins of big corporations being involved in media.
Absolutely.
I mean, the fact that journalism and people are actually calling themselves journalists is a thing. It doesn't exist anymore. The honesty doesn't exist. I like what you said because it reminds me of like the Farmer's Almanac or something. I thought that word popped in my head right when you said that, because when you want honesty, you're getting it from the Farmer's Almanac because it's not biased. It's just telling you how it is from people who have experienced what it is. And I'm so interested in moving American Contingency forward with this idea in mind. And Dustin's right there. Remind me to talk to that team in the near future before the inauguration to, one, thank them. I do thank them for their professionalism, but also be better tuned in live for everything that they're doing so we could report on it to everybody in American Contingency, maybe even doing a YouTube live or whatever that may be, because there's something emerging. And whenever there's lulls, whenever there's problems, the great thing about Americans and their story is somebody's going to step up. That's not me. I'm not the one stepping up. It's you. You're the one stepping up. You're the one who's making a change in your life. I feel like I'm just a conduit for it,
Yeah, but thank you. And you're a conduit for not just myself, but millions of other Americans that are tuning in to what you're doing. It's, and you're right. It is, you are the conduit. So you are doing it, but ultimately it's them. It's them making that decision to break away from being brainwashed, allowing themselves to continue to go down the route. And, as we've seen in other countries that have dealt with these issues, and you can tell I'm tapping on this very lightly, the propaganda is not going to stop. It's not going to stop. It's going to, chances are, get worse. And so, connect with your community, talk to your people, and really also that's what you're doing in American Contingency. You're setting up these groups where people can communicate and keep that communication, among themselves, and not entering an echo loop of persuasion. It's just honest, clear, transparent reporting.
What a novel idea for people to actually get together in person and have a conversation. That's so unique.
Crazy.
How
Like
to
at
start a
church
business.
or at a bar,
Yeah.
or like,
That's insane.
even just like, I like the other day, I pulled my mask off. I'm such a rebel, right? And I was like, I'm just going to see how many stores I can get into today. And I'm just going to smile at everybody because I have these big teeth.
They're beautiful teeth.
Thank you. But I can't figure out if they're slightly intimidating or just like really big. If people just smile because they're like, oh my God, her teeth are so big. But
it's your
but
smile
I love
so big.
that. I love that, and I miss that. And it brought a tear to my eye. I left Sportsman's Warehouse. I almost started crying. I went in to buy,
because their inventory, it's weak.
because their inventory sucks. It actually really, unfortunately, I didn't get what I wanted. I wanted a cup. That's funny you say that, because I wanted a cup for Kevin Estella.
Yeah.
Kevin Estella's class on the 16th. I'm
Nice.
taking the basic survival.
Is that here?
Yes, I'm so excited. Yes.
That's gonna be fun.
Yeah,
I'm
but
excited.
so we need a cup, and so anyway, I went there, didn't find it. I imagine I'll find it somewhere else. I'll try a mom and pop, camping store. Hopefully some other place will open that I can buy my really cool outdoor survival stuff.
We'll
right?
make cups just so you can buy one from us
Nice.
to support small business.
Perfect. Exactly. Well, I mean, if you're going to be doing a class that involves them,
We
you
are,
should-
yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. But so, just smiling at people, I think just having that community, even just that little bit of communication where you just smile at somebody, it just like, yeah. Communication is so large, and these are the things that I want to encourage people to question. Why are they muffling us? Why are they not letting the president of the United States communicate on his Twitter? Why is it that this is allowed to happen? This is all unconstitutional, and I just I encourage people to do the research and we speak to a very intelligent group of people, right? You speak to American Contingency, and so you're speaking to a very intelligent group of people. And my platform with people who are interested in grow their own, they're interested in becoming self-sufficient. So that's a very highly intelligent. I encourage everyone listening to just seek out honest news. Look at it all. And that's where I started. I started just looking at it all. And I was like, okay, so what's basic? What's simple, right? That's simple. Goes back to simple. When you read something, if it does not feel right to you, if it feels too right to you, if it feels questionable at all, do your research. Look further into it.
I'm thinking of logos here. I'm like, simple, honest news. Just like something that we just need to get back to basics.
Right.
Oh, man.
And authenticity wins, no matter what. And I just really feel like, yes, my sister and I were very cute in our garden.
So cute. That's all
So
that
cute,
is.
thanks. But the thing is that we were authentic. We are authentic. We really sincerely are the farmers of this farm. We really sincerely are second-generation cannabis farmers. Everything that I am producing and making, I'm making with my two hands. It's authentic. And I think that a lot of my popularity came from being authentic versus a very staged type of educational platform. And so I just really encourage people to look for news that is coming authentically from people who don't have so what is their motivation, right? What is your motivation? Your motivation is to prepare people, is to have them be their first line of defense, and I honor that. I can align myself with that. Where what is and not to continue picking on them, but what is CNN's motivation?
Profits,
Who owns CNN?
Yeah.
And so you start asking yourself these things, and it's like once you start waking up from it, there's no stopping it. So just embrace it.
That's the real woke. That's the real woke. Siobhan, first I want to say thank you for coming on, because it takes a lot of courage to talk about your story. It wouldn't take a lot of courage for me, because I just put it out there because I would vomit that. I'd be so excited to tell that story. Like and I would just go off. But for somebody as humble and kind as you are to tell that story and to be open and honest about it after experiencing so much trauma with the short-sightedness that is radical ideologues, is very courageous. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm also, secondly, looking forward to not only working with you, but growing our friendship.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited about that.
Oh, thank you,
Yeah.
Mike. Me too.
It's going to be awesome.
Me too. Absolutely. It's such an honor,
Yeah.
truly. And, I thank you. And I want to just really quickly end with, so I did move. I did relocate out of California, and my heart is broken. It is very sad to leave the state that I have so much connection to. And I just want to tell all of the people listening who had to relocate due to, stress from their state. And if they relocated to a new state, I want to just really quickly throw in there that please evaluate what you like about that state that you moved into. And when you go to vote, please be aware that you're voting in, rules and regulations that you feel are going to be appropriate. Don't consider what political person that is or party that is. Just look at what you're voting for, because unfortunately, California was run into the ground by politicians. And the reason why small businesses cannot afford to live there is because they have been taxed to death. And so I just encourage people that, my heart goes out to you if you've had to relocate, especially New York and all of those big cities and Portland and stuff like that. If you have relocated, please just consider your political stance once you reach the state that you have relocated to.
Very sound advice. Because a lot of people don't think about those things, and then they find themselves in problems. And I always I'd love for Utah just to close its borders and just be like, we're just going to operate independently. You never know, it might happen.
Well, I think if we start pushing the Second Amendment, that is a potential.
I actually think that too. That's a different podcast, but I literally think that's the solution, because what you'll get is a shunning of these federal organizations to say, you're not going to enforce that in my state on my people. And we are people of states, United States, all Americans. But man, I am optimistic about the future when so many people are pessimistic because of all the things that are going on because of people like you. And I'm super excited to learn more from you, especially when it comes to homesteading and growing, because I know jack in about it. How can people find you via the platforms that you're active or that you're on, so people can learn more about you?
Yeah, definitely. I'm fairly easy to find. My name is Siobhan Danger Darwish. You can.
What?
Yeah.
Can we put that in the notes?
Exactly. Siobhan Danger Darwish. You can type that into DuckDuckGo. I suggest using DuckDuckGo over Google, and get yourself a VPN. Throwing that in while I'm in there. And you can find me on Instagram under Grow Sisters, or also True Grit Hostler, which is my personal Instagram. I'd love to see you on there. You can check out all my cultivation stuff on Grow Sisters. I also have a YouTube, which I have been creating educational videos on, so you can check that out under Grow Sisters. Yeah.
It's still Grow Sisters.
Yeah, we're still Grow Sisters.
Awesome.
I figured, we grow everything. It's not just cannabis. Let's just grow everything.
Let's just grow life back to where it needs to be. Thank you so much, Siobhan.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thank you.